Hey, good morning. So we're going to take, last day we took a look at just vaping. Today we're going to take a look at cannabis vaping. But that always opens up a little bit bigger can of worms just about cannabis in general. So this is kind of interesting. So about a month ago, I posted this on one of my social media pages. Cannabis is almost addictive as opioids among teens. So uh, uh, decent research. Uh, and we've known for a long time that the adolescent brain is much more uh, at risk for developing addiction dependency problems, depending on what term you want to use. And but this says that cannabis is addictive as opioids, and we've got a huge uh, opioid issue in the country right now, and people are talking about it a lot. And when you start to understand that it isn't just opiates that is a problem, it's substance use that's a problem, and often people will transition into opiates. Some people who develop opiate problems, it was almost accidental, like they got something from their doctor and misused it or overused it and developed a problem. But the majority of people who have opiate issues, that transitioned out of other substance problems. Uh, Maybe an alcohol problem, maybe just a polysubstance party problem, and most people who develop substance problems started before they were 17. And so understanding that we really need to pay attention to adolescent substance use is important. What was really interesting when I posted this article is that I instantly got attacked. And that happens very, very often when I post anything that's negative about cannabis. I think with a little bit of tongue in cheek, a lot of people that smoke a lot of cannabis don't have a lot going on other than sitting around waiting to react to something that has anything to do with cannabis because they want to protect it. But this one individual who started attacking me and this article uh, was speaking about cannabis like it was a cure-all for everything. And again, that's not true. Uh, if you want an adventure, you can go back and dig through it's on my personal Facebook page, my Ranted Facebook page. I think they ended up with about 160 comments on it. But what's also interesting is a whole bunch of other people jumped to my defense and started to say things like, excuse me, this guy actually knows what he's talking about, so maybe we should pay attention. Anyway, sorry. So, cannabis vaping, those four questions, critical for everything. Is what we're thinking true? Is it really true? How are we feeling or acting because of how you're thinking? And how would you feel or act if you thought differently? Specifically with cannabis, if you are thinking that it is not as bad as, or thinking that it's a plant, it can't really hurt you, things like that, that can get you into trouble. So here are some examples of cannabis vape products. Uh, these are obviously marketed for teenagers. Now, one of the things that you need to understand about uh, cannabis vape products is that they are essentially using extremely strong THC substances in them. THC is the substance in cannabis that gets us high. It's the cannabinoid that is psychoactive. And most leaf bud cannabis is around 20% THC, between 15 and 30% somewhere, depending on the strain and what exactly you're getting. Typically, the products in these oils that are in these vapes is above 80%. That's ridiculously strong. And the stronger something is, the greater its addictive potential is. So that's one example. Here are some other ones. And in very small print, I had to blow it up because I couldn't actually see it. Under these ads, and um, they have like nice names like Baker Street, uh, Houndstooth, Penelope. I mean, all sort of Baker Street sounds a little bit weedish because one of the expressions is "let's go get baked." But under in very small print, it says there may be health risks, health risks associated with vaping that are not fully known or fully understood. Refer to the following risks for vaping, and it's got a Health Canada website. And it's interesting because that is specifically on nicotine vaping or just vaping in general, not specifically on cannabis vaping. But these are attractive products, they look safe, and they are above 80% THC. So here's some other ones. This is a different, and so they are marked so people can, have a pretty good idea what's in them. They're marked with THC. But again, these things are streamlined, they're accessible, they're easy to use. And the other thing about them is there's essentially no odor. So one of the things that we used to look for when we were being concerned about adolescent marijuana use was smell. And that's not an issue with these particular devices. And again, the THC content in these is 80%, and you get two of them for $82, which uh, is a little bit expensive, but it's a product with fairly high quantity. So here's some research. Numerous studies have demonstrated that using cannabis prior to the age of like between 15 and 18 significantly increases the risk of developing psychotic symptoms. The risk is dose dependent and increases with greater frequency of use and higher potency of THC. So the stronger the product and the greater the frequency, the greater the risk. A landmark study out of United Kingdom analyzed 780 adults ages 18 to 65, 410 with their first psychotic episode versus 370 matched healthy controls. They found that use of high potency THC greater than 15%, and remember the stuff that I was showing you is typically above 85%, resulted in 3 times the risk of psychosis. And if the use was daily, there was a 5 times increased risk. And it is not unusual at all for teens to start to use daily. It's unusual for them to use alcohol daily. It's sort of a weekend thing. But the culture and the thinking around cannabis easily makes it comfortable for people to start using on a really regular basis, and every day isn't unusual. Uh, and then it says those using hashish with less than 5% THC. Hashish is a substance that is a somewhat refined version of marijuana, but uh, less than 5% THC didn't exhibit psychotic symptoms. And then another article, users of high potency cannabis are 4 times more likely to report associated problems, twice as likely to report anxiety disorder than users of lower potency strains. That's according to new research from the University of Bristol. So, I regularly am dealing with kids with cannabis issues. So a couple of weeks ago, one of the young women that I've been working with has been into doing dabs. Dabs is an affectionate term for using some of those high potency cannabis products. They come in waxes and oils and pastes. And in addition to the vape pens that you can buy in the stores, you can also buy jars and bottles of these highly refined THC products. And kids refer to them as doing dabs because they'll stick a hot metal implement into it and get a little puff of smoke and inhale that. And again, you're inhaling an extremely strong version of a drug. Anyway, she was absolutely freaking out because she was trying to quit. She couldn't sleep, she couldn't eat, she was losing weight. Uh, she was uh, like yelling at me, not in anger, but in frustration that she absolutely had to have some marijuana just to make her feel okay. And fortunately, we were able to work through that with her. And and after a few days, and it took her a few days to go through that initial withdrawal period of really high anxiety, total fear about not being able to sleep, uh, and absolute craving for cannabis. And people really underestimate what this drug is all about. And anxiety is one of the huge issues that cannabis causes. And again, really, and I got to be more specific. THC is a huge factor in uh, making anxiety worse if it's already there, or if it isn't there, changing the brain sufficiently so that people start to have higher anxiety related to all sorts of different kinds of issues. So um, here's a little video on weed and psychosis.
As more states are legalizing marijuana, experts say there are some health risks people should think about.
9 on your side's Taja Davis takes a look at a new study and what it means.
One of the more troubling health effects to consuming marijuana is the risk of having a psychotic episode. A new study published in The Lancet Psychiatry shows that consuming weed on a daily basis and using high-potency cannabis is associated with a higher risk of psychosis.
During an episode of psychosis, an individual might have altered perceptions, their thought processes might be different, and they might lose contact with reality completely. For example, they might have hallucinations where they're seeing things or hearing voices, or they might have false belief systems.
The study found those who used weed daily were 3 times more likely to have a psychotic episode compared with someone who never used the drug. Use of high-potency weed every day almost doubled those odds.
And it gets even worse that if people who use high-potency marijuana have a 5 times greater odds of having a psychotic episode.
The study defines high-potency cannabis to have more than 10% THC. Dr. Trush says one theory that connects weed and psychotic episodes is that marijuana influences dopamine in the brain, a chemical that can affect hallucinations. But she and the study stress that there really is no conclusive link of marijuana directly causing psychosis.
Unfortunately, marijuana has been classified as a Schedule I substance by the federal FDA and thus hasn't been studied completely. We would greatly benefit from having further studies done so that we could completely understand what marijuana is doing to the human body and mind.
According to the National Alliance of Mental Health, as many as 3 in 100 people will have an episode at some point in their lives. Taja Davis, KGUN 9 on their side.
So,
As more states are legalizing.
I know it always does that. So, again, the high potency products and the product that's available in cannabis vapes is of significant concern. And I guess the other concern, and it's really no different than alcohol. I mean, teenagers aren't supposed to be able to get alcohol because they're not old enough. Now that we have legalized cannabis and legalized cannabis shops, much of the product that adolescents are accessing are through these shops. And I think the shops are being responsible in checking ID and stuff like that. But the age is 19, so it's pretty easy to have a 19-year-old friend go in and pick up stuff for you. And, I guess if there's a good side to anything, the fact that the products are labeled and you know exactly what's in them and what the strength is of some advantage. But the problem is that people are looking for stronger and stronger substances because they develop tolerance to regular cannabis, and they want something that's going to work better to get them high. So some of the symptoms of starting to have a cannabis dependency or a cannabis problem is to not be able to eat unless you get high first. So your appetite really disappears. And that's one of the physically addicting symptoms or problems related to cannabis use is your appetite becomes dependent on it. And certainly, historically, medically, it's been used as an appetite stimulant for people who are on chemotherapy, which is okay. But it also helps us understand that can become a problem too. And I know I've talked to lots and lots of teens who are starting to lose significant amounts of weight because of their cannabis use. So, if you have a teenager and you notice that their weight is dropping substantially, this is certainly worth checking out. Uh, Irritable and moody is another really strong symptom of a cannabis problem. Increased anxiety or restlessness. And, I've talked to lots and lots of teens and lots of parents. And anxiety is coming up as the issue that's getting people's attention. So, parents are saying, well, my teen's anxious, or uh, teens are saying I'm anxious. And then you start asking, well, where's your cannabis use at? And typically there is cannabis use present, and often it's very excessive. So again, that's something to really pay attention to. Uh, and then that sleep issue is really predominant with chronic cannabis users. Like THC is very good at initiating sleep, uh, but it interferes with quality of sleep. So your sleep doesn't, help you relax. It doesn't help you resolve stress. It kind of knocks you out, but you don't sleep properly. But then really quickly, you can't go to sleep without it. In terms of psychotic symptoms, anxiety is kind of a precursor to more mental health problems and more extreme mental health problems, as is depression. But like I was just talking to a mom the other day whose son has been hospitalized in a psychiatric ward for over a month because of extreme uh, uh, psychosis episodes directly related to cannabis. And he's in the last couple of years, he's been in and out of the hospital multiple times. And this is a kid that I talked to like 4 or 5 years ago, and he absolutely refused to look at anything negative about cannabis. He said, one of the things he said was, "Oh, it's no more addictive than ice cream," and just completely blew off any information about uh, a negative fact about that drug because he liked it so much. And his use became excessive and caused him, considerable problems. And I've seen, similar episodes over and over again with kids. So again, we need to take a look at those questions and is what you're thinking true? If your kid's having some mental health issues, anxiety, depression, focus problems, those kinds of things, it's really useful to do some assessment on cannabis. And if we can work at getting it out of the way, if we can work at separating the teen from the cannabis use, very, very often, many of the problems that are being experienced will just disappear like smoke into the atmosphere. Anyway, that's it for the day. I hope you saw something here that was useful for you. And I don't know that, oh, there we go. This is always this little adventure that I have. Stop recording. I will see you tomorrow. Thank you.